Back at it again with another episode of whatever the hell we call this with Dr. Andy. Today we're going to be talking about absolute strength, and I want to define terms real quick because we can't agree or disagree on anything or find any wisdom if we don't know what the hell we're talking about. So absolute strength is your overall ability to move load, independent, so does not depend on your body weight, your mass, your gender, your sex, who your mama is, what president you voted for. Doesn't depend on any of that. Relative strength would be something that we look at when people are talking about pound for pound rankings, seen very commonly in the fight game. Okay. Also, someone that is relatively stronger would be like in the 93 kg weight class. What is your max lift within that weight class? Not what is your max lift compared to Olga's max lift, right? And Turnikov's max lift and Sony Webster's max lift, because that's absolute, not relative, because we're not talking about weight classes here. So little definition of terms, absolute versus relative. We are talking about absolute strength here, and you need the background so that we're not talking over anybody's head. Andy?
Yeah, man. As far as definitions go, that was pretty cool and clear. So, all right. So with absolute strength, because let's dive into that. So uh, there's two types of lifters, I would say, within that.
Okay.
So, and I would classify them as efficient lifters and not efficient or less
Okay.
efficient.
Okay.
So now it's going to be a little bit inverted. So you would normally hear the word efficient and think that's a positive for whatever it is that you're talking about. And it's not necessarily a negative in this case, but somebody who is uh, efficient lifter in the powerlifting world, or say even the Olympic lifting world, right? Moving the most amount of weight, you do not want to be an efficient lifter. And I'll kind of explain what that means in just a second. But versus an inefficient lifter, um, because it's all going to come down to resources. So what I mean by that is somebody who's picking up, let's say, a 600-pound deadlift, right? Pretty heavy load, regardless of the size. James, like you said, absolute strength has nothing to do with the individual's body mass, who they came out of from the womb, any of that. So 600-pound deadlift, the inefficient lifter is going to make that look easier because their nervous system is going to recruit more motor units, which are neurons or nerve cells that attach to muscles. So basically, the brain just says it lights up a Christmas tree, sends all it's got, the entire military, to lift this weight off the ground. Okay. Versus versus an efficient lifter, the brain will only send the cavalry that it needs in order to
Mhm.
lift that bar. So, James, you and I, let's say we're the exact same metrics head to toe, right? Age, weight, sex, gender, body mass, you name it, the
Mhm.
exact same. Okay. And we're trying to lift this 600-pound deadlift, the
Mhm.
600-pound bar deadlift, right? If I'm a more uh, inefficient lifter, I'm going to make that look easier than you will as an efficient lifter. The difference being someone who's more efficient is going to be able to do a higher percentage uh, for more reps. So, like, let's say out of 600 pounds, right, 90% of that is going to be what, 540. So they'll be able to rip 540 off the ground for a higher amount of reps. In this case, we're talking anywhere above five or so, usually 6 to 8 to 9 reps. Okay, versus say me, who's the inefficient lifter. Okay, I'm not going to be able to. I'm probably going to do 2, 3 reps at my 90%. Now, some of you might look at that and say, "Well, I would want to be an efficient lifter if that's the case." Well, the efficient lifter hasn't tapped out or maxed out their absolute strength ability. So their capacity to uh, have an absolute strength is lower than somebody who's less efficient.
Okay. So if I'm hearing you correctly, somebody that can pull in a for one. They can pull the 600, but then has trouble deadlifting in a workout 405 for 20 plus reps, while the individual that is more efficient might be able to rep out that 405, no problem. The inefficient is going to have a hard time doing high volume of a decent percentage, even though I know 400 to 600 is a little bit, but like we're not going to throw over 405 in a workout. So just for, education's sake here, the efficient lifter that can also pull the 600, right? Still a clean full rep, technically speaking. They both pull 600. That efficient lifter will most likely, assuming everything else is the same, be able to move, touch and go, right? Which meaning there's not a dead stop at the bottom, right? We're not resetting. We're touching the floor and standing up, right? Just like most CrossFit athletes do at competitions and what have you. They will be able to do more in a row without getting tired, or just move more faster? Is it a concept of speed? Is it a concept of overall capacity, work capacity? Is it a concept of
So,
endurance?
so I would say not necessarily power. So not necessarily moving faster,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Okay.
Because speed's going to be mostly predominant on how many nervous motor units you can recruit,
Mm-hmm.
right? So then the more that there are, the faster the muscles are going to react, and the more powerful
Mm-hmm.
contraction you get, and the faster that you move. So the more efficient lifter is not going to move faster. But yeah, the analogy that you're using there is yes. So take somebody who can, if we stick in the CrossFit space for a
Yeah.
second,
600, 600, same.
yeah. So like someone doing Fran, for
Mm-hmm.
instance, which is 21, 15, 9 reps of thrusters at 95 pounds for guys, and then pull-ups, right? I can do Fran unbroken, but because my absolute strength is so low, somebody who has a higher absolute strength is going to be able to move that faster than me, even though we can both do that unbroken. I can still move it as many times as they can, and they may get more taxed cardiovascular wise. I just cannot move as fast as they can because I am not recruiting as much nervous stimulation to my muscles.
Got it.
Okay. So capacity wise, that's a little bit of like a gray area because you're going to look at somebody who's more efficient and their capacity potentially is going to be higher. Because it'd be like James, you trying to throw a golf ball to somebody who's 10 feet away. You can easily do that without putting any effort
Mm-hmm.
barely into that, correct?
Yeah.
Well, just imagine you throwing your maximal effort behind that throw every time. That's what an inefficient lifter is doing.
Oh my goodness. That's a lot.
Yeah. So they're going to get neurologically taxed, right? Because they're basically sending all they have to a task that may not require that much
Mm-hmm.
work to it. Does that make sense?
It does. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's probably a better way to put that from the beginning, but here we are.
Hey, here we are. So, what does someone need to know that's walking into a CrossFit gym that is doing exercise that wants to know why the hell they should care about this at all? What would you say to them?
I think it's important for coaches first to know the
Mm-hmm.
difference, right? So they can kind of guide the
Mm-hmm.
the person who walks through the door. But so if somebody asks them a question, well, shoot, how come I'm not increasing my one rep max per se, right? Well, it's
Mm-hmm.
also good to test the limits underneath that absolute strength because
Mm-hmm.
maybe somebody who's been a cardiovascular athlete predominantly comes in, starts lifting weights.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably, because of that change, they're probably going to see um, that massive difference, that leap with their weights right away versus somebody who comes in with like a strength background and they start doing these, more, we'll use CrossFit for an example, right? They
Mm-hmm.
start doing more high volume reps, et cetera. They may see that strength number stay the same, right? But their capacity underneath that will go up. And so being able to explain, like, here's what's happening in your body physiologically, right? It doesn't need to go down to the nitty gritty stuff, but like, hey, you're improving, but just we're looking at it through a different lens.
Mm-hmm. Because of
So
what your background's in.
yeah, potentially, right? So now how you kind of, for people that are like, well, how do I kind of like get more absolute strength? How do I get more capacity, so to speak, right? How do I become more inefficient? How do I become more efficient? So somebody who's looking to become more inefficient or get stronger, right? You're just going to have to play within that that realm of rep ranges.
Mm-hmm.
So what I mean by that is sticking between your 1 and 3 reps, right? Don't going above, not going above 4. Okay. That's going to help push you to become more of an inefficient lifter. You're tricking the nervous system, you're tricking the brain to be like, everything I'm doing is so heavy that I need maximal recruitment every time. Versus on the opposite end, somebody who's incredibly strong, but their capacities, right? They stink. Okay. Do the opposite. So their rep ranges are going to stick a little bit higher, right? So I keep it 4 plus, primarily between like a maybe 5 to 8
Mm-hmm.
rep range, right? And then, 8, 10 plus is a different animal, but I would say that's just how you kind of simply play it there. If you're looking to kind of, how do I ascertain one more than the other?
Yeah. Which is easier to gain?
Oh man, that's uh that's a tough question because it depends on where you're coming from.
Got it. Easier to gain from a novice that's never lifted weights or had a big background in cardiovascular exercise, coming in off the couch, everything equal, which is easier to gain.
So cardiovascular athlete or a
No,
novice,
someone that's neither, not cardiovascular, nor previous strength training, zero.
got it.
Stagnant individual off the couch, which is easier to gain first.
Uh man, it's honestly it's gonna be the neurological recruitment because it's gonna be faster because it takes a while for actual hypertrophy to occur.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because and I'll put it to you this way, right? So most people when they go to the gym, they start being consistent with it, and they take a week off, or they take a month off, or they take an extended period of time off, right? So protein breakdown usually occurs as far as muscular goes, it's anywhere between 10 to 14 days plus. So at like the 10-day mark, 14-day mark, and I think there's some variable play with this, but for simplicity's sake, that's when you actually start to begin to break muscle down and you start to actually lose it. But let's just say somebody takes, a week off, right? Or even a weekend. Most CrossFit athletes hate taking both Saturday
Days
and
off.
Sunday
Yeah.
off, days off, right?
Yeah.
They come back in Monday and they're like, oh my gosh, man, like I feel so out of shape, right? That's usually the verbatim that everyone uses. I've used it in the past. Well, you didn't actually get any less fit. If you've taken 5, 6, 7 days off or even longer, what the first thing that kind of goes that makes you uncomfortable in a workout is your nervous system just got punched in the face because the body doesn't want to put any energy into something that you're not actively using. So the first thing that gets turned off when you don't use something are the lights.
Yeah.
Lights in this case is the nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm not using my biceps, my body's first gonna be like, well, instead of ingesting my proteins there, I'm just gonna stop sending electrical signal to it. So that's usually the first thing that kind of like gets shunted, and then it's the first thing that kind of kicks back in.
Hell yeah.
That's why
Okay.
that's why you don't go to the gym for a month and look like Dwayne the Rock Johnson after 30 days, regardless of where you're coming in from.
Yeah. Well,
Does
I
that make
mean,
sense?
perhaps hypothetically speaking, he's also using a lot of tren and a lot of other stuff to get that size and stay that size in his 50s, perhaps. But yes, it does make sense. 100% does make sense. So good for coaches to know first and everyone else to know second. And then also understanding that, like, if you want gains, right? You want measurable, attainable gains, the strength is probably going to come before the endurance. Buttercup.